All right, so let's take a look at what some of the strumming patterns you're going to use are. In the verse, I'm going to be using the D chord, right? I'm going to use those three strings for the D. Lift up this finger and you've got, comes right out of a G chord. Right? Right, that's your verse chords right there. And in the recording, they've got right? So I'm going to implement something that I think is going to be a little more straightforward to use while you're singing, and that's going to be a palm mute technique with the right hand. Okay, so we've got just on the very edge here, next to the bridge on this side, about a finger width area right there where you keep the flesh of your palm barely in contact with the strings, and you get this type of sound. So the chunkiness of that. It sounds really cool. And if you do this, there's a summer that I miss the most. I was living on the West Coast. Every day around 4 o'clock, I'd meet you down on the old boardwalk. Right? So we can get the emphasis or the accent with the open chord sound there in contrast with the chunkiness of the muting of those chords, and then you get the cool the beat or the syncopation that happens in the recorded version of the song. So if you get this, there's a summer that I miss the most. I was living on the West Coast. Every day around 4 o'clock, I'd meet you down on the old boardwalk. You like to walk out to the end, and then we'd sit down on the edge, let our feet sway in the breeze as your head leaned into me. And we're going to go into the chorus right there. Get a D chord, right? I open up the high E string right there to go with this note on the 3rd fret of the B string. End up being the same, right? Big D chord right there. And all I have to do these chord changes, get the D, right? When I squish down these two strings, the G and the D. So D, this is our A chord, right, for the chorus. It's actually an A suspended 4. And then your G chord, where I've got just on the 3rd fret here, I'm muting the A string right there. And I left my ring finger on the 3rd fret here, and then left the E string open. Has a really cool sound. So you've got D, the A, and then the G. Oh, 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 I still see you there. Oh, oh, oh. Right, so there's a basic chord strumming pattern right there, just all downstrokes. If you want to use something a little bit different right there. Oh, oh, I still see you there. Oh, oh, the wind dancing through your hair. Oh, oh, back then I didn't care about anything but you. Alright, so that strumming pattern that I used right there, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, G, right? So down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, A, G. Alright. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, A, G. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, D. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, A, G. And if that That would take a little bit more work. And it'd be easier to just start off with, and I think best to practice in the beginning with. Oh, 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 I still see you there. Oh, 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 the wind dancing through your hair, and then you can change it to. Oh, 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 back then I didn't care about anything but you. 'Cause if you notice, to do this strumming pattern, my hand has to come back up anyway, and it's just missing the strings. So if instead of missing, I just hit the strings on my way back up, that'll work. It'll get you a good pattern there. So a full chorus right here with that pattern right here. You notice the ending. We've got the E minor. You just use those two fingers. E minor, and then your G. Again, leaving that high E string open. It's been tuned down a whole step, right? So let's go to after the chorus. Anything but you. I'm gonna let that chord ring. Back then I didn't care about anything, anything but you. And I would do that in between the verses right there. So all I did was I took that chord, the D chord, right? Hammer on. And then the second chorus, second verse will begin right after that. Anything but you. Nights were what I loved the most. Drive my truck up and down the coast. Never really had a plan. Just pull off somewhere in the sand with the blanket and my guitar. Right, so during the second verse, I think it's appropriate if we're just using the same exact chords again, it's nice to have something that's just a little bit different there. You can play the same exact thing you did during the first verse, and that'll sound fine. If you want to add something a little bit different, all I would recommend there is to, instead of playing the 3 strings D, I would play the 4-string D right there. And I'm not using the high E string here. I'm saving that for the choruses and the bridge, right? So 4 strings there, and then change your G to, again, I'm muting the low A string, right? And then that way, instead of those 2 chords, you've got, it's a little bit of a meatier, heavier sound, and having your second verse sound a little bit different is always going to be a good thing, because it's still basically the same thing. Nights were what I loved the most. Drive my truck up and down the coast. Never really had a plan. Just pull off somewhere in the sand with a blanket and my guitar. Find a spot underneath the stars. So sing you every country song I knew. Try to get a little close to you. Oh, oh, oh. And go right into the chorus right there. Okay. So the next thing you're going to need to know is the bridge part. Oh, you'd pretend your hands were cold. This is where you're going to need the B minor chord. So this one, 2 frets up here on the low A string is your bass. And then it's as if you took these 3 fingers, and you know how to play an E. If you know how to play an open E chord, right? Use these 3 fingers for it instead of these 3. So use these 3 instead. Right? Now that shape right there, you can move it all around the neck of the guitar and have that chord. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that one, take that and bump those over 1 string. I guess I could have just based it off of the A minor to begin with. That's what I should have done. A minor chord. Use these 3 fingers for it. Move them up 2 frets and then bring your bass note right there. There's your B minor chord, right? So with this one, because we've got this high E string tuned to a D, it just, again, happens to go right along with that note. And you're going to get this thing going on. And we're going to leave that high E string open. And you see I'm using left-hand muting technique there. Pressure, let off, pressure, release. There, I'm exaggerating by moving the neck of my or moving my whole guitar there, but you can see what I'm doing hopefully. That's where that A chord is going to sound really cool, having these 2 notes clash like that. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. You're going to love it. Okay, so here's how the bridge is going to go. Oh, you pretend your hands were cold, so I would hold them as if I didn't want to, and I pretend that come September, I would stop the left hand releasing of pressure right there. I wasn't gonna lose you. Yeah, that sounds cool, right? Okay. So that pattern is down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Now if you couldn't hear what I was doing, it just looks like down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, but it's down, miss, down, up, down, miss, down, up, down. I keep screwing that up. So putting that all together there with the bridge by itself. Oh, you pretend your hands were cold, so I would hold them as if I didn't want to, and I pretend that come September, E minor, I wasn't gonna lose. So then I took that A suspended 4. That's how you're going to get that cool little sound there at the tail end of the bridge. And then it goes right back into the chorus. However, this one's kind of a more relaxed chorus. It's going to build back into the final chorus. It's a little bit different. So after this... Oh, 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 I still see you there. Oh, 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 oh. I would just take those chords and palm mute them all, because then you still got the rhythm going. Whoa, whoa, oh, I still see you there. Oh, 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 the wind dancing through your hair. Oh, 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 back then I didn't care about anything. And that's where I would let it open up. Anything, anything but you. And the one different thing there is it's going to go to the A chord before it goes into this final chorus. Back then I didn't care about anything but you. Tonight on this beach. And here I would start using the actual D chord where you use the regular fingering, all three fingers, because then instead of this, you're going to get this, which is your D add 9. Gives it a nice something, a little extra there for this last chorus. So you build into that. Back then I didn't care about anything but you. Whoa, tonight on this beach. I still feel you next to me. I just can't seem to think of anything but you. Anything but you. Alright, for that ending, you get to I just can't seem to think of anything but you. Anything but you. Alright, so I did a pull off or a hammer on first with the D chord. And switch to the G. I left this finger here on the 2nd fret. I'm going to hit it and pull it off. And you can pull it in this direction because you're not going to pluck the B string and cause any sounds that you didn't want to hear. Anything but you. You can end it that way.